The movie begins by showing a man named Hugh Glass who is hunting in the snow forest with his boy named Hawk. Glass is a European man who was married to a woman from one of the Indian tribes called the Pawnee tribe, where the Pawnee tribe is one of the oldest tribes among other Indian tribes in the United States. Glass and Hawk are seen hunting furry animals so that the fur from the game can be handed over to a European fur businessman named Andrew Henry. Glass is known as one of the best navigators of the Pawnee tribe, so he is often assigned as a guide in the forest. In the afternoon, when the Pawnee tribe workers were skinning animals, a group of men from another Indian tribe called the Re tribe suddenly attacked them and took all their skinned animal hair. When Glass and Hawk heard the screams of workers from another direction, they rushed towards the direction of the sound to help the Pawnee tribe escape while fighting against the Re tribe, who was attacking them blindly. In a panicked state, Glass continued calling Hawk's name and directed the remaining members of the Pawnee tribe to move towards the river and hide in the ship. The situation at the Pawnee tribe's headquarters seemed to be in disarray due to the chaos caused by the Re tribe. Not even a few members of the Pawnee tribe died because they were brutally killed by the inhumane forces of the Re tribe. After a fierce and long battle, several members of the Pawnee tribe, including Glass and his kid, managed to get into the ship and escape down the river. As a result of the fight, the Pawnee tribe's workers, who originally numbered more than 30 people, now only left 10 people, including Captain Andrew himself. The workers decided to return to the warehouse where all the workers from Europe gathered for the winter. After they had sailed far enough, Glass suggested to Captain Andrew that they should pull over and explore the forest on foot, as Glass felt confident that the Re tribe could catch up to their ship. He realized that the area of the river they were currently crossing was the territory of the Re tribe, so it was very likely that the Re tribe would be able to find them downstream of the river. After considering Glass's words, Captain Andrew ordered his male assistant, John Fitzgerald, more familiarly called Fitz, to stop their ship. After unloading the goods from the ship, Captain Andrew and the group of Pawnee tribe workers then walked through the forest around the mountains according to Glass's direction. As a guide, he explained that the mountain path was safer because there were not many foodstuffs, so the Re tribe couldn't follow the path. In the afternoon, when all the Pawnee tribe workers were resting, Glass purposely wandered around alone to find food for their group. Unfortunately, while hunting for food, he was suddenly attacked by a huge black bear very brutally, where the black bear directly tore his body fiercely. Glass kept trying to rebel and put up a fight so he could escape from the fierce black bear attack, but unfortunately, he still couldn't get away from the bear. However, after he painstakingly fired one bullet and stabbed the bear with a knife, the ferocious black bear finally died. Nevertheless, he had already suffered serious injuries from the black bear's bites and scratches, so he fell unconscious after killing the bear. Not long after, Captain Andrew and the other workers managed to find Glass and rushed to help him. Captain Andrew had studied medicine for several years, so he tried to treat Glass with makeshift equipment, and his life was saved. On the other hand, the leader of the Re tribe and his members went to meet a fur businessman named Toussaint to hand over the fur they had stolen from the Pawnee tribe. Apparently, the people of the Re tribe snatched fur from the Pawnee tribe to exchange it for horses and weapons from the Toussaint group. The Re tribe plans to travel to Europe to find the whereabouts of the daughter of the Re tribal leader, who has been kidnapped by a foreign man from Europe. Back to Captain Andrew and the Pawnee tribe, who were about to continue their journey to the workers' warehouse. Unfortunately, due to the previous bear attack, Glass was paralyzed, so the Pawnee tribe members had to lift him on a stretcher. As they passed a fairly steep cliff, Captain Andrew and the rest of the Pawnee began to feel that Glass was merely a burden that slowed their journey. Because Captain Andrew thinks that Glass can no longer survive, they plan to kill him. Hearing this, Hawk and his male friend, Jim, looked surprised and asked Captain Andrew to reconsider these words. When Captain Andrew points his gun at Glass, he doesn't have the heart to kill Glass, so he stops his intention to kill him. Afterward, he offered $300 to anyone who would accompany Glass and Hawk there until Glass died. Hearing the offer, Jim and Fitz volunteered to help Hawk take care of Glass in the middle of the forest while Captain Andrew and the others continued their journey to the barn. Throughout the night, Hawk continues to encourage Glass to survive, while Glass, still unconscious, suddenly dreams of his past when a group of soldiers from Europe attacked the Pawnee tribe and killed his wife. Since the incident, he has lost his wife, who he loves so much, and he feels very guilty for not being able to protect her properly. After 2 days of accompanying Glass, Fitz began to feel frustrated that Glass had not died while the weather was getting colder and food supplies were running low. Then, he approached Glass secretly and said he would take Jim and Hawk safely to the workers' warehouse if Glass allowed Fitz to kill him. If Glass refuses the offer, Fitz will kill Hawk in front of him, and he will be unable to do anything to save his son. With a heavy heart, he was forced to accept the offer because he didn't want his son to be killed by Fitz. Fortunately, when Fitz is about to kill Glass, Hawk finds out and pushes him away from Glass's body. However, because Hawk threatened to report the incident to Captain Andrew, Fitz became very angry and killed him using a knife. Glass, still completely paralyzed, could only cry and groan in anger because he couldn't do anything to save his son. In the afternoon, when Jim returned after looking for some groceries, he asked Fitz about Hawk's whereabouts. Fitz lied by saying he didn't know where he was currently, but he was sure he would be fine. The next day, Fitz suddenly wakes Jim and tells him that dozens of Retribe members have arrived at the river near their location, so they must flee. Jim, who panicked, rushed to pull Glass so that they could join him in escaping from that place. But unexpectedly, Fitz actually dragged him into a shallow hole and buried him alive in the hole. Fitz tells Jim they can't take Glass because the Retribe is approaching them, and taking him with them is risky. With a heavy heart, Jim was forced to leave Glass in the hole while leaving his drinking bottle for him. After Jim and Fitz left, Glass tried to move his still paralyzed body and tried to drag his body out of the hole. He crawled closer to Hawk's body, lying lifeless behind a tree trunk. After bidding farewell to Hawk, he tried to rise from the adversity and began to muster his will to survive. Currently, he only has one goal: to take revenge on Fitz for the death of his beloved son. Because his legs were still paralyzed, Glass could only crawl using his hands and started looking for food from the remains of bones he found on the ground. After he managed to get drinking water in the river, Glass tried to treat a wound in his throat using sawdust and learned to walk using a wooden stick. One day, when Glass was resting by the river, he was almost caught by the Retribe on the other side of the river. Fortunately, even though he had to swim into the very cold river water, he escaped from the Retribe's pursuit. That night, while sleeping by the river, Glass suddenly woke up when he heard a wolf howl. When he checked towards the source of the sound, he met a man from another Indian tribe who was eating raw venison. Glass was desperate to approach the Indian man to ask him for a piece of venison because he was very hungry. Feeling sorry, the Indian man kindly handed him a piece of fresh meat. The next morning, the Indian man named Hickok saw the many stitches on Glass's back. He asked why he had so many stitches. Glass explained that he had experienced many horrific incidents where he was attacked by a black bear and had to witness his only son being killed in front of him. He tells Hickok that he intends to avenge the person who killed his son. Hearing this, Hickok informed that he experienced the same thing with Glass, where his family and tribe members had been massacred by Indian tribal groups from other regions. But he tells Glass to cancel his plan of revenge because the fairest revenge can only be done by God. Soon after, he decides to take Glass on a journey together so they can protect each other. Meanwhile, Jim and Fitz have reached the workers' warehouse area together with Captain Andrew and the rest of the Pawnee tribe. Before entering the warehouse, Fitz warned Jim not to tell Captain Andrew anything, so they wouldn't be punished, and he did as Fitz said. When Fitz and Jim go to see Captain Andrew, he tells a story by saying that Glass has died peacefully, while Hawk has left them because he can't accept that his father has died. Hearing that, Captain Andrew could only grieve over Glass, who he considered his brother, before he finally gave Fitz the money according to their previous agreement. Back to Glass and Hickok, walking through a heavy snowstorm in the middle of the forest. On the way, Glass suddenly fell unconscious because he had run out of energy, so Hickok decided to build a wooden tent in that place to warm his body. Even after struggling to build a tent, Hickok built a fireplace and treated the wounds on his body so that Glass could recover quickly. The next morning when Glass woke up, he couldn't find Hickok anywhere, so he thought Hickok was hunting in the middle of the forest. But when he walks into the forest, he must face a very painful reality when he sees Hickok, who has been killed and hanged on a tree branch. When he heard people chatting, Glass hid behind a tree trunk and found that Toussaint and his group were talking about Hickok they had just killed. He feels very sad and angry when he knows that the group deliberately killed Hickok just because he was an Indian tribeman. As Glass draws closer to Toussaint and his group, he sees a girl who turns out to be the daughter of the leader of the Retribe named Elk Dog. It turned out that all this time, the people who had kidnapped the girl were Toussaint and his group, and they deliberately lied to the Retribe so they could easily use the Retribe to get animal fur. When Glass saw that one of Toussaint's men was about to rape the girl, Glass stopped him and held him secretly. Glass then stole 2 horses belonging to the Toussaint group so that he and the girl could escape from that place to their respective destinations. The next morning while Glass was resting, the Retribe suddenly attacked him, so he rushed to run away on his horse. Unfortunately, he accidentally fell off a cliff and into a ravine until he fell unconscious for several hours. When Glass wakes up, he sees his dead horse and tries to split open the horse's stomach so that he can warm himself inside the horse's corpse. After the blizzard has stopped, he resumes his journey and is determined to find Fitz to avenge Hawk's death. On the other hand, one of Toussaint's men came to Pawnee's warehouse for help and some food. The man then explained that 2 days earlier, a foreign man had attacked their camp and killed several members of Toussaint's group. The man then shows the water bottle left by the killer, and when Jim sees it, he realizes it is the bottle he left for Glass. After Jim informed that the man might be Hawk, Captain Andrew ordered his members to prepare for the location of the attack. While all the members were getting ready, Fitz looked at the bottle again and guessed that the possible killer was Glass. That night, Captain Andrew and his members tried to find Hawk for hours, but those efforts were also to no avail. Finally, they heard a gunshot from someone, and it turned out to be Glass. Then, Captain Andrew and his members rushed to help and carried him to their camp shed. The next morning, Captain Andrew looked surprised because he couldn't find Fitz anywhere because he had escaped from the camp. After that, Glass goes to see Captain Andrew and tells him everything that had happened. He asks Captain Andrew to give him a horse and a rifle as he plans to hunt down and kill Fitz. Although initially, Captain Andrew was worried about Glass, but when he saw the anger in his eyes, Captain Andrew agreed. The next day, Glass and Captain Andrew begin their journey to find Fitz. After crossing the snowy mountains, Glass suggested they split up west and east so they could find Fitz faster. Shortly after, Fitz suddenly appeared and shot Captain Andrew in the head to death. After Glass sees Captain Andrew lying lifeless, he feels sure that the person who killed the captain is Fitz. Glass plans to lure him to get him out of his hiding location, and it turns out that this method successfully lures Fitz out. After finding Fitz, Glass ran after him, who had already fled towards the river. Just as Fitz was getting cornered, he tried to defend himself by saying that he was not guilty of Hawk's death because he died on his own. Hearing his words, Glass felt very angry and attacked him with an iron machete. A fierce fight ensues in which the two point their sharp weapons at each other. After a long and tiring battle, Glass finally manages to get Fitz into a corner and intends to kill him. At the same time, the Retribe and the girl who had been saved by Glass suddenly appeared from the other side of the river. When Glass was about to kill Fitz by strangling him, he was reminded of Hickok's message to let our family go and erase the intention of revenge from our hearts. After Glass lets Fitz be carried away by the river current, Elk Dog grabs Fitz's body and slits his head as a reward for the help Glass did. The film ends with a scene where Glass sees the shadow of his wife's figure, who died several years ago. She looked at him with pride because he had managed to leave his family with a peaceful feeling. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that revenge will never be able to return the people we love, but it is sincerity that makes us feel more at peace over the departure of our loved ones.